And we begin with breaking news tonight. Just moments ago, the Justice Department urging prosecutors to drop the corruption trial against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. The Department of Justice says the indictment came too close to the 2025 mayoral primary race, adding that the trial interferes with Adams' agenda to work with President Trump on illegal immigration. Adams was originally set for a criminal trial in April. He has been insisting that he is innocent. And before we dive into the latest news here in Washington, D.C., terrorist group Hamas now says it will indefinitely postpone the next hostage release until further notice, sparking concerns that the ceasefire deal with Israel could break down. Israeli protesters gathering in Tel Aviv following the announcement. Hamas was scheduled to release 3 Israeli hostages this coming Saturday in exchange for Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli detention. Instead, the terrorist group accused Israel of violating the ceasefire agreement. The Israel defense minister describing the announcement as a, quote, complete violation of the ceasefire and called on the Israeli military to prepare at the highest level of readiness in Gaza. Hamas has released 16 hostages out of the 33 that were agreed upon during the Phase 1 ceasefire deal. President Trump signing an executive order to impose tariffs on steel imports. The administration says it's to counter foreign countries like China from flooding the U.S. market with cheap imports. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent, Iris Tao, who is live at the White House. Good evening, Iris. What are the president's latest announcements today?
Good evening to you as well, Steve. So just now, President Trump inside the Oval Office signed separate executive orders imposing a blanket tariff of 25% on all steel and aluminum imports coming from all foreign countries. President Trump says that's to encourage domestic production and bring jobs back. And in response to price concerns, he says these tariffs will ultimately bring prices down and make these products cheaper. Watch.
It's a big deal. This is the beginning of making America rich again. We were being pummeled by both friend and foe alike. Our nation requires steel and aluminum to be made in America, not in foreign lands.
And a senior White House official told us tonight that another goal of these tariffs is to ensure that American producers can compete on a fair playing field. And he also criticized foreign countries, including China and Russia, for overproducing these products and flooding U.S. markets with cheap imports. And that's, of course, as he adds that the U.S. needs to reduce its reliance on foreign countries when it comes to critical industries like steel and aluminum.
So, Iris, President Trump's blanket tariffs seem to be targeting imports from all foreign countries. But which countries would you say that they're most aimed at?
That's a great question. So actually, the top exporters for steel to the U.S. are Mexico, Canada, and Brazil. But while China is not on the list, it's ultimately also targeting China. Like we just said, the official warned that China is actually exporting cheap imports to the different countries, including, of course, Mexico and Canada, and ultimately leading to these countries' increased exports to the U.S. and hurting the American steel industry. And actually, in the past administration, it actually also imposed a 25% tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum and another 25% tariffs on Mexico for any aluminum and steel produced through Mexico, but not really produced in there. It's actually anything shipped from Mexico. And the goal of that tariff is to target China because China has been trying to avoid such tariffs by routing its goods through America's trading partners. Steve.
It is worth noting that this administration seems to be working at a rapid clip when it comes to executive orders, surpassing previous administrations' executive orders in their first 100 days in just his first few weeks in office here. So, Iris, with that said, what else was on the agenda for the president today?
So inside the Oval Office, President Trump also signed an executive order, as he previously previewed, to make plastic straw back again, basically to gradually phase out the use of paper straws. And he also previewed more actions in the coming days. He says it will announce reciprocal tariffs in the next 2 days, and also says more items will be subject to tariffs, including pharmaceuticals and chips and cars. And meanwhile, he also issued an ultimatum to Hamas, saying that if hostages are not returned by noon on Saturday, all hell would break loose. Watch.
Saturday at 12 o'clock, and if they're not here, all hell is going to break out.
And of course, it comes after Hamas says they're postponing all hostages' return for now. Steve.
Iris Tal, live from the White House. Thank you. And joining me now to discuss these latest developments in tariffs is Jim Nelles, U.S. Navy veteran and supply chain expert. Jim, great to have you with us.
Good evening. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, President Trump today announcing an additional 25% tariff on steel and aluminum for certain countries. U.S. steel and aluminum stocks rallied in anticipation of this. What will be the impact of this on the industry here in the United States?
Well, it's not the first time he did this. He did this in his first term, and it worked very well for President Trump. And if he does it again and they actually go through, what we'll see is that we'll see American steel and aluminum become much more efficient and much more competitive against foreign competition. Now, I'm a free market capitalist, right? I don't like tariffs. I don't like to see this. But until other countries will do the same to us, I understand exactly what President Trump is trying to do, and I actually will support it. Even though it may mean in the short term higher prices for American citizens, those prices will come back down. And as we saw in Trump's first term, these things are not inflationary. They actually are deflationary in the long run.
Sounds like what you're saying, it's more of a surgery rather than a Band-Aid. Where does the U.S. get most of its steel, and what kind of ripple effect might this have around the globe?
We import a lot of steel from China, Brazil, and Canada. And it just depends on which companies are doing what they need to do in order to import that steel and what type of steel they're importing. So all of these countries are going to have tariffs put on them. We've already seen Trump put the tariffs on China. We saw him halt some tariffs on Canada, but I think the steel will take precedent on that. And we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But again, at the end of the day, let's look at what Trump has done. He uses these threats of tariffs, and these tariffs have not gone into effect yet. He uses them as a negotiating tactic. He did it with Colombia, and Colombia all of a sudden agreed to take back hostages. He agreed to do it with other countries. He did it with Panama. He did it with El Salvador. He did it with Venezuela. And all those countries agreed to do what Trump wanted them to do. Even did it with Mexico and with Canada. And they put troops on the border to protect our southern and northern borders from illegal drugs and from illegal aliens. So at the end of the day, do I think there's going to be a long-term effect? No. Short-term, absolutely. But again, it's a negotiating tactic on the part of President Trump.
Jim, this does seem to be strategic and targeted. So why would you say, out of all the different possibilities of imports, that he's focusing on aluminum and steel at this moment?
Because these are two American industries that struggle. If you look at companies like Alcoa and U.S. Steel, they've always struggled with their ability to make profits. They've always struggled with their ability to do things. And that is because, quite frankly, they have to compete with foreign competition that are subsidized by their foreign governments, and therefore they cannot compete on a fair playing field. What Trump wants to do, and what I agree with, is we want free and fair trade across the board. Let's not have any tariffs at all. Let's have every country in the world just say, we will not have any tariffs. Everyone can compete on the best foot that they can do. And therefore, if you're good at what you do, you can be great. If not, then someone else will do it for you. But what he doesn't want to do is to fight with one hand or two hands even tied behind his back.
Now, Communist China's retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods taking effect today. How will this impact the American economy, and how should the United States respond to this in terms of national security concerns and influence in U.S. foreign investment policy?
It won't hurt us much at all. If you look at the end of the day, China is much more reliant on us importing from them than we are, than they are on us exporting to them. So while it may mean some exports go down, at the end of the day, China is much more reliant on us buying their goods and their products. So them putting retaliatory tariffs on us really won't hurt the U.S. economy much at all.
Do you think Trump's trade chief, Peter Navarro, and Trump himself have a few tricks up their sleeve to pressure the Chinese if this continues?
Absolutely. But one thing you have to remember about China, Trump is still upset with China about what happened in 2020 with COVID. He still blames China for him losing the election. And so therefore, a lot of his tariffs on China are going to be retaliatory and not necessarily based on economics, but based on him being upset. And again, with Trump, you never know what he's going to do, right? So, but at the end of the day, he's going to do what's best for the American people. Peter Navarro is a brilliant economist. I would support anything that Peter Navarro wants to do. I really believe in what he says and what he does. If you read any of his writings, his books or his papers, he really understands how global trade works, and he's looking out for the best interest of the American people. And so at the end of the day, I think we're going to be in a better place than where we started.
China certainly could have prevented many of those flights from leaving during the height of the pandemic in their country, all the while locking down flights inside of China. So you make an excellent point there, Jim. Jim Nelles, thank you so much for joining.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
President Trump's federal funding freeze facing a major legal upset. A federal judge today ordering the administration to fully comply with a previous order lifting the freeze. This is after a group of Democratic state attorneys general last week saying that some funds remained frozen. U.S. District Judge John McConnell in Providence, Rhode Island, ruled that all funding must be restored at least until he can hold a hearing on the state's motion for a longer-term order. The Trump administration had told states that it believed the order did not apply to certain environmental and infrastructure spending and that some payments were delayed or operational and administrative reasons. A federal judge today keeping his block on the Trump administration's deferred resignation offer to federal employees. And the judge says he'll consider blocking it for a longer period of time. NTD legal correspondent Arlene Richards has more.
Boston District Court Judge George O'Toole on Monday blocks the Trump administration's deferred resignation offer for one more day, giving labor unions that sued to stop it a temporary victory. Last week, O'Toole blocked a midnight deadline for more than 2 million federal civilian employees to accept a proposal. It is unclear when the judge will rule on the request by the unions to stop the offer entirely. The offer promises to pay employees their regular salaries and benefits until September 30th without requiring them to work. Unions argued that funding the salaries is not guaranteed because current spending laws expire on March 14th. They urged their members not to accept the offer, fearing the administration would not honor it. A White House official reportedly told Reuters that about 65,000 federal workers have signed up for the offer. It's part of the administration's plan to reduce the size and rein in the actions of the federal bureaucracy. The president has accused agencies of abuse of power, fraud, and waste. A union lawyer argued that the plan might disrupt operations at agencies, impacting the functioning of the federal government. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Elon Musk says that FEMA violated the law by sending tens of millions of dollars to luxury hotels to house illegal immigrants. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has an update from Capitol Hill.
Elon Musk made the announcement on Monday morning. He said that DOJ discovered that FEMA sent $59 million in payments to go to housing illegal immigrants in what he called luxury hotels in New York City. Now, the interesting thing about this is not something that happened a couple years ago. This happened last week. So Musk is saying that this was a move that violated the law. It violated Trump's executive order, and that DOJ will be demanding that these payments be reversed. Musk said on X, quote, that money is meant for American disaster relief and instead is being spent on high-end hotels for illegal immigrants. In response, Cameron Hamilton, who is the senior official performing the duties of FEMA administrator, responded to Musk on X. He thanked Musk and said that the payments have been suspended. He said that the personnel responsible for this move will be held accountable. And the Trump administration responded to a judge blocking temporarily DOJ from accessing some files within the Treasury Department. Last week, 19 state attorney generals sued the Trump administration, saying that the administration giving access to DOJ to these Treasury systems is illegal. A district judge, in response, temporarily blocked Doge from accessing those systems. However, it's not 100%. There are still 2 employees that are able to access these files. However, they cannot make any modifications. And the president responded to this directly on Fox News. He also gave some hints on where Doge might be heading next.
I disagree with it 100%. I think it's crazy.
You say you trust him.
Trust Elon? Oh, he's not gaining anything. In fact, I wonder how he can devote the time to it. He's so into it. But I told him do that. Then I'm going to tell him very soon, like maybe in 24 hours, to go check the Department of Education. He's going to find the same thing. Then I'm going to go to the military. Let's check the military.
The Trump administration filed a motion to vacate or modify these orders by the judge to block temporarily Doge's access to those files. And also in relation to this, Trump did mention that the military might be a next place for Doge to go. The Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, did publicly say that the Department of Defense is publicly committing to passing a clean audit, something it's never done before, and looks forward to working with Doge and Elon Musk to help streamline this process. Reporting on Capitol Hill, Jason Blair, NTD News.
OpenAI CEO Sam Altman has rejected a reported bid from Elon Musk to buy the nonprofit that controls his company. According to a Wall Street Journal article citing unnamed sources, a group of investors led by Musk offered $9.74 billion to purchase OpenAI. Altman responded on X saying, quote, "No, thank you." He then offered to buy Twitter for a less than $10 million, a fraction of what Musk paid when he bought the platform. Over the past year, Altman and Musk have had several legal disputes over the direction of OpenAI. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.